Hey, welcome back to one of my podcasts. This is Lenny Morgan. I am going to be reading off script a little bit. I experimented one time with an AI app that may have been in CapCut or somewhere that kept my eyes focused on the camera. And although it was engaging to have that eye contact forced in there, it was inauthentic and it looked really weird to me. So I'm just going to do live cuts as they are. And I think, maybe I am betting on in a day of AI where a lot of this perfectionism in video is coming out. It's great, but I think it's going to have negative repercussions for those who overuse it. That's what I'm betting on. So you're going to get me, authentically me, with little or no edits. Um, I don't have a lot of time for edits, even with AI. And then when I use AI a lot, I find that it's inauthentic. It's not me anymore, and it's weird. And I can tell the difference, and anybody who knows me can tell the difference. And then if I overdo it, even my cold audience can tell the difference. So you get what you get. Um, the reason I say that is because I want to be an example to anybody who's an entrepreneur. And one of my biggest things that I learned was how to be authentic, meaning how to be true, how to not be this fake persona of who I'm not. This week, I am talking about why most entrepreneurs fail, not because they're lazy. It's because usually that they interrupt their own momentum. I can at least say that this has been true for me. So this whole thing really is largely based on a case study of my own experience over the last 40 years in being an entrepreneur since I was 10 years old. Is when I first got into the world of entrepreneurism. I was a test guinea pig for my stepdad, who who put me in front of his whiteboard while he was doing a network marketing plan. And that was the very first time I had discovered entrepreneurism, was hearing him go through the plan. I had no idea. I mean, I knew people were self-employed, but it really opened my eyes. And from then, I've never left that world with personal development and entrepreneurialism since the age of 10, since that happened. It's almost age 8, but it was about 10. So most entrepreneurs don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they interrupt their own momentum. At least that was true for me for decades. Okay. Looking back now, I can see the patterns but when I was in the middle of them, I couldn't see. Uh, I thought that I needed a better business model, a better strategy, a better offer, more certifications, a better website, another idea, et cetera, et cetera. And I would kill my own momentum because I was trying to go, this isn't an MLM type structure. This is true for any business, but in MLM, for example, if you go too wide before you go deep, you're going to kill yourself. The same is true in business. Width is important, but you got to have depth. When I was going to college, they said the same thing about when I was writing my papers, I would go really, really wide and broad, and they're like, no, go very, very, very deep. And that's what they teach in the doctorate programs. You go deep in one subject, not wide trying to cover a whole bunch of them. And for a long time, that's what I would do. I would go wide and try to cover everything that I can think of and think, well, maybe I'll catch a larger audience that way. And it just doesn't work. Depth wins 99% of the time over width. So every time I would start to get some progress, I would often change it because my program would say, well, you need to catch a larger audience, or maybe I would go through a little temporary stall or slow down for one reason or another, not necessarily because what I was doing was bad. It's just usually because I was getting off track. So when that would happen, I would try to go and improve it, optimize it, add complexity to it, or abandon one idea and start another one, start another opportunity. But what I didn't understand at the time was that momentum is very, very fragile, and most entrepreneurs, at least for me, this was true, will destroy it themselves. And it doesn't look like self-sabotage when we're doing it. It seems very logical, right? But I used to think that growth came from more ideas, more products, and I still struggle with this today. And I still get to bring myself back back to the basics. That's one reason I record these videos, is I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to anybody else. That it's true that growth comes from not necessarily having more ideas, more products, more learning, or more effort, but over time, it you start to notice something strange, that the biggest results in my business rarely came from massive effort. It's usually from small little adjustments, a small change in my wording, a different offer angle, a simpler process, faster follow-up, clearer message, sticking with something longer than I would normally stick with it. So these little tiny little tweaks here will usually have disproportionate changes to my results, meaning a tiny little, what might take me minutes, an hour maybe, might have huge dollar figures results or audience growth results, as opposed to working on something for days or weeks. And then sometimes it gets me little or nowhere. So once I started noticing this pattern, this is, most entrepreneurs are not working under this, by the way. Once I started noticing that I was overcomplicating things, one of my biggest problems, and I spent for years, was making things harder than they really needed to be. I thought, and I still struggle with this today, I need to have more complexity, more sophistication. Maybe if I work harder, then that means it's more valuable. That's a big program that I still struggle with today. Sometimes it pops up and I get to remind myself, no, what if it's easy? That's, in fact, that if it's not on my whiteboard, it's going back on my whiteboard. That's one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite mentors, Shonda Applewhite, another person from Clemmer. What if it was easy? It totally disrupted my pattern from everything has to be hard. So, because I thought harder meant more valuable, and I thought more moving parts means that it's more important, but complexity creates friction, and friction will kill execution. And that execution is what we really need to get momentum, and momentum is what we need in business, right? That's where we get sales, or whatever it is that generates our income in our business. So one thing I noticed every time is that as soon as I started getting traction, a strange little discomfort would appear. And I noticed that just this past week. That's why this is coming up here. Is at the time, a long time ago, I used to think it was stress. Now I recognize it as a old program that is no longer serving me. And what I now call it is identity conflict. So part of me wants success, right? And so, but there's another part of me that's afraid of success, which seems like, how could that possibly be true? But it's there. There's this part of me that's uncomfortable with becoming the person that is required to maintain success constantly. And I think for me, it goes back to, what if it's hard? And what I remind myself is, well, what if it's easy? If I buy into what if it's hard, then it creates this self-sabotage pattern. And if I slow down and say, what if it's easy? It stops and interrupts that thinking pattern long enough that I can start to process through it. If I don't do this, it's not obvious sabotage, because it seems very, very logical that, well, it's so hard and I should slow down and I should make this thing perfect first. And then I delay, I overthink, I redesign, I research, I shift directions, convince yourself of, and I convince myself that, yeah, this is a strategic thing, but it's really not. It's just perfectionism. Another mentor said of this, perfectionism is an elegant form of procrastination. And that's another quote I really remind myself of often. Because if I slip into those patterns, then I'm really just avoiding momentum. And momentum will force change, and change can be scary, and it threatens identity, threatens who I am and who I think I am and who I feel I am. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs underestimate how psychological this game really is. People talk endlessly about funnels, sales funnels, online funnels, ad algorithms, the how-to. And the how-to can be important, and I get a little bit into the how-to as a practical sense, but I'm not usually one to sell the how-to. I will sometimes when people want it to, but I weave a lot of the why and the psychology into it, because I think that is just as important, if not more so, than the how-to. How-tos are Brian Clemmer's famous book. If how-tos were enough, we would all be skinny, rich, and happy. And that perfectly explains his very first seminar. It's worth flying across the country or even across the world to go to one of these seminars. Again, free plug. I don't make any money at all whatsoever. By the way, if you message me though, I do have a referral code that'll get you half off. I don't get any compensation for that, but I'm happy to share that with you one-on-one. Just message me and say, hey, I want to go to a Brian Clemmer thing, and I'll give you that. But anyway, if how-tos were enough, we'd all be skinny, rich, and happy. And this was written way before the internet, by the way. This was written, he wrote that in the 70s, I think, 70s to early 80s. And it's still so true today. Then the internet came out, right, in the 90s. And then now we have AI. And the how-to was not complicated. And you can get on your favorite AI and find out how to do anything. You can get on a YouTube video, find out how to do anything. Look up on Google how to do anything. The how-tos are not complicated. But all the psychology that keeps us going forward, that's the real thing. That's what keeps us going in momentum or breaks momentum. So and I think these things matter more than most people think. What's running back emotionally to keep us stable. So one thing I've seen recently in my own life is that consistency beats intensity almost every time. So here I am, I'm consistently making my videos. They're not going to be perfect. That's my next line of my notes here. Not perfection, not giant breakthroughs. Consistency. Yes, speaking to myself as well as my audience. So consistency is so important. Simple, repeatable actions. I have this actually built out in my calendar, my weekly steps that I report where I do my emails and my blogs and my videos every single week and my social media posts. And I get them all planned out and put into the calendar that puts them out daily. It's just simple, repeatable actions. And then in my business, I have networking. I have reaching out to people. I have checking my messages daily, sometimes hourly, depending on which business line it is, and how fast the follow-up needs to be. So most people will switch around, never sticking with long enough to get those compounding results. It's so true in business, it's true in money, and it's true here. And then that leads to constant restarting. And then I did this for years, and it kills momentum. And it resets the game every time I start to get some growth. Gosh, if I had stuck with anything, well, I have stuck with a few things. To be fair, it's not that I haven't stuck with anything. I've had great success. I had a military career. I was successful in that. I had an insurance business. I was successful in that. And so I've had successes. It's just there's certain other type businesses that I want to be successful that I've restarted many times over the years. So that's and I'm not doing a woulda, shoulda thing. Don't shoulda on yourself. Don't should on yourself. That's another one of those sayings out there, but it's true. We can't go back and change the past. We can only learn from it. What I can learn from my past is just stick with things, be consistent, keep going. I don't need a new niche or a new direction or a new offer or new branding or a new system, because those just aren't really necessary. Yes, I get to make little micro adjustments. That's important. I'm not saying don't do that, but don't continue to take the airplane that's already in the air, go back to the airport you just took off from, and take off again from the ground. Don't do that. Make your micro tweaks in the air, so to speak, as you're going. Don't reset the flight from the previous airport every time you come up with a new idea. And a lot of times, just write those ideas down, put them off to the side, and I have gobs and gobs of stuff. I've come back over notebooks and Word documents that I've written from years ago, and I'll look at these ideas and I'm like, I don't even remember having that idea, or I'm glad I didn't go with that, or yeah, that's a great idea, but it really wasn't as important as just sticking with the path that I stayed on that got me to the result I wanted. So momentum is not always progress. And let me go back and reframe that. That was incorrect. Movement is not always progress. Momentum usually is. So that distinction matters because you can spend years moving, spinning your wheels, without advancing. Doing a lot of busy work. And it feels like you're productive because you're doing a lot, right? You're burning a lot of gas. You're burning a lot of that midnight oil, so to speak. And you're just not getting the traction that you're looking for. So one of the biggest, wow, this is going to be a long video. Great. Yay. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to cut this off because I'm already at 15 minutes. So I'm going to stop right here and we'll start video number 2 right here. Jeez.